Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. So happy to welcome Julie Sparks, who is the Executive Director of ICANN Housing. Good morning.
Good morning.
Someone might be new in town. ICANN Housing. What is it?
You know, I'm glad you're asking because the more that people know, the more help we can be. ICANN Housing is a nonprofit agency. We're 30 years old and we serve Stark County. Here's what we do. We really are here to help people who are homeless and people who struggle with mental health issues, particularly when people struggle with both. So our community, Stark County, has a pretty good safety net for people who are struggling, and we're part of it. Our role, one of our primary roles that makes us distinctive and that I really want people to know is that we do what's called street outreach. So that means that, a lot of us will see people out on the street or, we'll hear of someone that there's concern for, but we are just not sure what to do. And why would we be? It's not our expertise. Mm-hmm. But be aware that in our community, ICANN Housing is here, and that is our expertise. So if you see someone, you're not sure what to do, or someone that says they need help, they can get a hold of us. Mm-hmm. And we can walk step by step, side by side, all the way from I have no idea what to do to, I'm housed again, I'm back on my feet, I'm working, I've got this.
I've heard that some tent cities are being closed down. Are you seeing more people coming to your doors?
Well, there's no lack of people in our community. And tent cities, folks don't much care for them, and there is pressure to close them down, and I certainly understand why people create them at the same time. Mm-hmm. So it does create pressure, and even the cold season can create more pressure because for folks who are homeless, who maybe have come up with some ways to take care of themselves as the weather presses on, it's very, very difficult to manage. So it's a time of year when we want to be quickly helpful. And, we have the resources in this community to get people off the streets and house them. It's a process like anything else, but it can and does happen every day.
Would you say that ICANN Housing focuses more, since you mentioned mental health?
Yes.
Focuses more on those who are homeless because of mental health issues?
We do. I was mentioning we're part of the broader community, so we're not the only folks in our community who do help folks who are homeless. For example, the Canton YWCA, probably a lot of people might realize that. And we also have housing, but yes, in our agency, we have more resources to help people who are both homeless and struggling with mental health issues. But what's cool about it is that we're not even necessarily the ones providing any mental health services because we all work collaboratively. Mm-hmm. So, we might get someone in, if you will, and start to get them housed, but then you talk about getting them connected to services. And mental health services can be very stabilizing. When people are struggling that way, they may not have good focus, can't make good decisions, and things can snowball.
Show me what that looks like. How do you make those connections? Because you're dealing with someone who is homeless, who doesn't have a lot of resources to get places. Right. How do you do that?
It's kind of twofold in a way. Like initially when a person is still literally homeless and on the street, we have a team whose job it is to engage them. And that's sort of a technical term, even though it's a common day term. So it really means that our job is to try to find a way to reach that person so that they'll allow themselves to be helped. So we have the time and the people to do that. Mm-hmm. So that's why you'd want to call us so we can do that for a person. And then when we are able to connect with them and bring them in, if you will, then we find out about them. What is happening? What are your needs? Who's to say? Mm-hmm. They will. And as we walk through those conversations, we can start to identify what sort of support might help them.
Yes.
And so if it happens to be that they are mentally unstable or ill, there are great agencies in our community that we will do what's called a soft handoff. So we will take people there. People are fearful of the unknown and it's all overwhelming. So we will make connections, take people, make the call, sit there with them as they're lining up. And it could be any kind of service, not just mental health. I mean, maybe someone could benefit. They have a very low income and could benefit from some food stamps. Mm-hmm. We can help make that happen. Or, hey, I just started a new job and I don't have transportation. I can help you get a bus pass for a few months or something, until you get the money going. So it really varies by person. Some people need clothing. It could people don't have furniture. We can't provide all of that. So really, we're just, resource rich and aware. Mm-hmm. And so we help connect people to whatever community resources will benefit them, and we don't give up on them.
And yet we see people with all of these resources available, mm-hmm. people on random street corners with signs, and then you'll wonder, are they really homeless? Do they really not know where to go for help? Should I give them money? Should I give them swing around, pick up a sandwich or a salad and drop that off to them?
Totally get that.
How do we do that?
It's a great question, and it's as you can only imagine, it's not a clean and easy answer.
You're sure.
So some of the folks out there are what we would call literally homeless and legit, for lack of a better word.
Yes.
And seeking help. And some folks, panhandling is a part of how they make a living, and there's even been some concern, and I can't verify this, but that even human trafficking can be going on. That if you think about it, if I put a few people out on some street corners, and they bring me a certain amount of money, I can't say it's, a huge problem, but it's part of what can happen. So you don't know. And that is, again, exactly why Stark County put us in place for that reason, for you to not have to try to determine that person's need.
Right.
I'll be honest with you. Buying somebody a sandwich, I don't think that's ever such a terrible thing.
Exactly. That seems like the way to go.
But, there's also a risk in approaching people. Can be.
Yes.
So you have to weigh it out.
When I see the person with the sign saying, I need diapers size 5, I see that as legitimate. That's so specific.
Yes, it is very specific.
That's when I will swing into Mark's and here you go.
And I feel you. I'm also make those decisions in the moment.
Right. Right.
But generally speaking, best not to hand a 10 or a 20 out the window, not
Sure.
to sound callous.
Sure.
But, I Can Housing. Open your window and say that. Call I Can Housing. Mm-hmm. That's better than a $10 bill.
Yes. Yes. So, for the most part, would you say that people who are out there know about you, or do you think they're on the street because they do not know about you?
I think there's a good bit of folks who still don't know about us. We are constantly trying to do what we call an awareness campaign, and this is a great example because if you don't know of a resources, you're never going to pull from it. Word does get around. A lot of times when folks come to us, because we also have an office, they've heard from someone else who was in distress about us. So there's sort of this infiltrated undertone. Everyone, a lot of people who are in that situation know of us, but too many don't. But we're here, and Stark County has put us in place. We have put ourselves, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We have selected us to serve the community. So we need folks to just think of us as that key resource.
I'm going to guess that most people hearing us right now and joining us today are not homeless, but
Correct.
Perhaps they know someone who recently suffered a job loss, or it's precarious.
Yes.
What do you do in that situation?
It's funny you would use that word because it's exactly the right word. That individual is called precariously housed. Now think about it from a resource perspective. And we can help, and others in our community can also, but if I can step in with a small amount of resources and say do what's called one-time eviction prevention. So this month and this month only, because you were in the hospital for 10 days.
Yes.
We're going to go ahead and pay that rent. So for $500 or $700, that family remains stable.
Yes.
Great investment.
Yes. I can remember being at the Salvation Army one day, and a family walked in. They'd had a fire. And this was a family who was not accustomed to being on the receiving end of anything. And so they didn't know where to go,
Sure.
but they wandered into the Salvation Army and were amazed at what kind of resources there are.
And that's a good point because, I Can Housing doesn't have to be the only point of entry. It's important for all of us who provide services to know of each other and to know what each other has to offer so that when they walked into the Salvation Army, they may be able to help them with 2 or 3 or 4 things, but maybe there was a 5th that a fellow agency was able to step in for.
I think what you do is so important, but so tricky, for lack of a better term, because so many things cause homelessness. How do you even begin to get to the root?
Yeah, that's our one of our taglines, homelessness happens. It really does. The root, here's the cool thing. A lot of this stuff, it's actually from HUD. I should know what that means. That's our federal government, right? I know this one. Anyway, Housing and Urban Development. Anyway,
Sure.
They have something that they've determined. It's called Housing First. And it's a new model. It's different than what it used to be. What it means is, I don't care what you've done at all. You need a roof. Mm-hmm. We're going to get you a roof. Because without one, you're going to have a heck of a time doing much of anything else. Now you're housed. This is where the other half of our business, if you will, comes in. We have what are called housing support people. Okay? So, I got a roof over my head. I'm pretty shaky and I'm unsure. Well, now I have individuals who are going to stand beside me even still as I'm figuring out where resources are, trying to get an air mattress or figure out where the food pantries are, and then just keep working my way up. And we have people, they identify their own needs and priorities. So I don't look at you and say, what you really need to do is, no, you look at me and you tell me what you believe your family's needs are or your needs are. And that's what we try to address. But,
some people
yes.
don't seek out temporary housing because the rules seem to be too overwhelming. Can you speak to that?
I can speak to that. And it is true. There are, so many different models. Same thing with business. It's the same way in the nonprofit sector. So there certainly are some agencies and services where, a person has to do like what they call blow clean. In other words, you can't have shelter tonight because you're under the influence, and we don't have the capacity to manage that. But when it comes to housing, when you get to past shelter, all of us in Stark County are to have no barriers. That's what Housing First means. So you might even, not to sound, but a person might even have something pending criminally. Mm-hmm. They still need a roof. Mm-hmm. They still need to figure out how to eat, and get clean. And
does that then put the other people there in danger?
Well, danger is an interesting thing. These are everyone's a member of our community one way or another.
Yes.
The more that we can stabilize people, the lower risk becomes because the less their stress is too.
Yes. Where do the homeless go, Julie?
Mm-hmm. They go a lot of different places. You mentioned tent cities, so
yes.
Places where there's a lot of foliage. Railroad tracks are good examples because, that's not a place people are going to be walking or driving, so I'm going to be a little more unseen. Parks, we may not think so, but a lot of folks who are homeless, they'll sleep maybe in a park or wherever, but then they get up early and they get moving before you and I are in the car and driving to work. Mm-hmm. And that's how it works.
As the weather is turning, you really get concerned for people because we've been pretty fortunate so far this fall.
Lovely.
It's been terrific. I wouldn't mind sleeping out on some of these evenings, but it's getting to be the point where it's very dangerous to be outside with the elements.
It is. And, as it gets colder, boy, do folks start coming our way. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because not only do our numbers increase, for lack of a better word, but people also... you and I, people are more warm and loving and open their homes up more to people. So let's say you have that uncle that, just has never quite pulled it together.
Sure.
But maybe somebody in the family says, you can stay on my couch in February or whatever. Mm-hmm. Whereas in July, I just really can't do it.
Yes.
So people, there is some extra mercy, but there's also the need becomes more visible because people really literally can't, be on the street.
This takes me to my very next question,
all right.
But we're going to need to take a short little break here. We're visiting with Julie Sparks from ICANN Housing, and we'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.